What's up, everybody? Nick back with you here from Project Central, and as you may have seen on the channel recently, we bought an impound auction Miata. This is a 94 model. It's got the 1.8 5-speed, and it is rough. So there's really only one thing we can do to save it, and that's cart it. If you haven't seen the Miata cart, death cart, vet carts, stuff like that in the past, let me show you some pictures right quick. These are really cool, where you can basically take a crappy lightweight car, in this case a crappy Miata, and cut a bunch of weight out of it, cage it, and turn it into something pretty cool. So that's what we're going to do. But I haven't done any roll cage fab in a very long time. Probably about 8 years ago is the last time I did anything like that. So we are working on our roll cage prep list. So we're going to go over everything that I'm going to need to Miata cart this in this video. So let's jump right into it. Okay, first off, before we get really jumping into this video, if you want to see me do really dumb stuff with cars, check out our merch. We have these AI Can't Do a Burnout shirts. The link will be in the pinned comment. Enough shilling. Let's get to the list. Alright, first up is safety. No one likes going to the urgent care and getting metal chunks picked out of your eyeballs or trying to reattach fingers and stuff. Not fun. So we're going to take safety moderately seriously. I mean, still got to get some stuff done. But first off, we got to get some eye protection, right? I've got some safety shades. We've also got clear safety glasses, clear face shields, lots of stuff to protect your face and eyes. If you've never had stuff in your eyes, you're lucky. But if you've gotten a metal chunk in your eye and your eye swells shut, not fun. Been there, done that. Next up, gloves. We've got a whole different variety of gloves, from these regular basic red, just nitrile gloves. I picked up a set of these yellow. They're supposed to be they're supposed to be cut resistant gloves. So we're gonna try those out on this project. But leather gloves, welding gloves, nitrile gloves if you're handling chemicals, all those gloves really protect your hands. Next up, ear protection. We've got basic, like, cheapo earplugs all the way up to ear muffs. These are both styles of these are really handy. I personally have a set of just like over the ear earbuds that stay in, and they block out quite a bit of noise. And since they're Bluetooth, I get to listen to music and podcasts and other like YouTube videos and stuff. These are primarily what I wear in the garage because I can answer phone calls and stuff like that. But I've also got these. These are pretty worn out, but these are 3M Bluetooth earmuffs. I think they're called WorkTunes Connect. I need to get a new set of these because these are awesome because they block out a lot more noise and they're Bluetooth, so you can still listen to music and stuff. Alright, next up is layout. And of course, like I said in the intro, I have not built a roll cage in a very long time. It's been many, many years, like I said. So if I'm an idiot and leave something obvious out, post it in the comments. Probably going to. And if you're an experienced roll cage fabricator, post some of your favorite tools out in the comments so I can check them out. Alright, so in layout, first thing we're going to need for the Miata carts, we're going to need some good tape measures. I really like, my favorite tape measure of all time is this green Fast Cap. I really like it because it's the lefty-righty, which means that no matter which way you pull it, the numbers are up, right side up, right? Most tape measures, you pull it from the left to the right, numbers are upside down. Left-handed tape measures, right? And, you know, there's two different styles that are really handy. One is, like I said, this green Fast Cap I really like, but it doesn't have the magnetic end on it. So I picked up I'm also building some pipe fence out at my land right now. So I picked up this Craftsman one from, I think, Lowe's a while back. It's got a magnetic tip on it, and it's pretty handy. Next up for layout, we need markers. I really like these Milwaukee Inkzone markers. These are pretty handy. They have a nice black line. They're not like a blue line. Sometimes the Sharpies get kind of blue, and the tips seem to be pretty good. And I think I got a whole box, a dozen of these for like $10 at Home Depot the other day. Not bad. Also, getting some, having some soapstone on hand, having some paint pen markers on hand. All that stuff is really good for marking your tubing you're using. Next up, notepad. Just a basic notepad to take some notes. Measurements. You've got two sides of a car. If you're making an A-pillar for the driver's side, you're going to want to write down. If you're making a A-pillar for the driver's side, you're going to want to write down your all your measurements so that you can repeat the bend for the passenger side or whatever. You're also going to need some protractors. We've got a few different styles. I really like these little yellow ones. I think you get these from Harbor Freight for like less than $5, I think. And I've got two different kind of protractors here, but the little yellow ones do the best, and they're pretty easy to manipulate in tight spaces, and you can do insides, outside corners, all sorts of fun stuff with those. They're pretty good, pretty handy. One of the really handy things we're going to be using in the future is digital angle finder. This one is from Harbor Freight. Hope the batteries are still good on it, but it's really good because it's magnetic, and you can use it to compare different. It's not an absolute zero with gravity, right? So like when you're putting it on your tubing bender, if your tubing bender is a little off, you can zero it and just get a really good accurate reference from the tubing bender to the tube you're bending, so that you know how much bend you've put in it. Next up is levels. You can do a lot of fun things with levels. Obviously, you can plumbing and leveling, but also you can make sure that your chassis is level, so that when you put the level on the tube, you can actually compare it to where the chassis is. Because if the chassis is unlevel, right? So if the chassis is like this, then you level the tube off of level off the bubble, your tube can be all wonky. So sometimes you need to check the chassis and the tube and have a good reference to compare them. And last thing on layout is some 90 degree, and I'm going to also do a 45 degree cheater. What's a cheater? Let me show you. I'm going to build one right quick. Alright, well, we got our cheater bent here, and it bent at just a couple degrees past 90, but I'm not going to worry about it. Anyways, I did remember how to make a cheater, so what we're going to do is we are going to come here and we're going to cut this line. We're going to cut this line with an angle grinder so that we know that that's where our bend starts, and that's where we're going to measure from every time, so that we can, as we use it, we can put a tape measure in there and measure off of it. Alright, as we continue going down the list, we're on category 3, bending / tube work, right? So you're going to need a tubing bender. What I've got here is kind of a homemade contraption out of some 1-inch pillow bearings, a Harbor Freight air hydraulic jack, and affordable benders 1 3/4 tubing die, right? This is kind of a setup I put together a long time ago just to make a few simple bends. We're not really going to get crazy on this build where we're not doing a bunch of crazy stuff. So this is going to work just fine. I would love to have like a JD squared where you can do like 180-degree bends and stuff, but we're not going to be building any like shock towers or anything like that. It's just going to be basic cage work. So we've got a bender. We're also going to need a notcher. This is just a pretty basic tubing notcher. I think I got this one from Harbor Freight years ago. They've kind of discontinued and brought them back and forth under different labels, but this just has a pretty basic 1 3/4 hole saw in it. Works okay for simple notches. Next up, you're gonna need the way to cut your tubing to length, and for this, I love my cold cut saw. This thing is awesome. This is the DeWalt flavor, but it's got an new Evolution blade on it. Does really good. Cuts through anything like butter. You don't have to have the nice fancy cold cut saw. You can do everything with a Portaband like this one, a Sawzall, or even just a regular old death wheel. Next up, make sure you have plenty of flap discs on hand. These are great for prepping your tube, getting all the mill scale off, and making them shiny. And also, you can use flap wheels really effectively to clean up your tube notches. In fact, you don't even have to have a tube notcher. A lot of people, a lot of fabricators that I see will use just a flap disc when fitting tubes. They'll fit everything by hand, and you know, they'll start with something long, and they'll kind of sneak up on it till it fits just right. One of the newest things I found was actually this deburring tool. I got these off Amazon. This whole set was like under $10, and these are really cool because whatever you cut, a piece of tubing or whatever a piece of metal, there's sometimes a little burr in the inside, and this is a really cool little tool to help get that little bit of burr out of the middle of the tube for when you're working on stuff. The last thing I'm going to put on here on the bending / tube work section is angle iron. Having a scrap piece of angle iron like 2x2 or whatever is super handy, because a lot of times when you are working with tube, you want to make sure that you have a good reference line down the middle. You saw when we were making our cheater, I put it in the piece of angle on the workbench and made a nice straight center line down the middle of it. Super handy whenever you've got maybe you are doing some complex bends and you need to know, hey, I want the first bend to be in this plane, but then I know I need to rotate it about 20 degrees to make another bend. Imagine like going down the front of a fender. You've got to be able to reference the center line most of the time doing tube work, and that's just a really easy way to do it. I've also seen people do it where they take their tube and they'll rub it on the ground just to make a shiny spot where it comes in contact with the concrete. I know a lot of people do that. That's a free way to do it, but if you want something maybe a little bit more accurate, get some scrap angle. Next up is the actual welding section. Obviously you're gonna need a decent welder. For this cage we're doing MIG welding. You can TIG weld it if you're good enough and you got the time and you're doing something like chromoly. And whatever welding you're using, MIG or TIG, make sure you got enough weld gas to get your project done. The places that I go to are not open on the weekends because they're like a commercial place. So if I have to get my weld gas refilled, that means I gotta take a day off work. And while you're checking your weld gas, make sure you have enough welding wire or TIG rod or filler rod or whatever. One of the newest tools I've got is this tube belt sander. This is a Vevor kit, but I bought the kit and then I just bought a cheap Harbor Freight grinder to put it on. It's kind of a dedicated grinder. This thing works awesome for making the cleaning up the tube. Most of the time when we're notching our tube, you're gonna have oil on it and residue, whether it's cutting oil or WD-40 or something like that. You're gonna need a way to clean that up. So either some like non-chlorinated brake cleaner or whatever type of solvent you've got. First section we talked about was safety. Now that we're talking about welding, you need to talk about some welding specific PPE. You need to make sure you've got a decent welding hood. I like this one from Harbor Freight. It's not their super top of the line one, but it does really good. I've got a review on my channel from last summer, and it does pretty good. You need to also make sure you've got decent welding gloves, and a welding jacket. A lot of times when you're doing cage work, you're out of position, you're underneath, you're in weird spots, and you can't always guarantee that slag or splatter is not gonna hit you. So make sure you've got some good welding equipment. Next up, make sure you've got some welding blankets. Again, these are just some cheap fiberglass welding blankets, but if you need to protect paint or glass or cloth interior or whatever you don't want weld splatter on, cover it with these blankets and it'll really help you. And as we're getting stuff fit up, you're going to need to make sure you got enough magnets, clamps, and stuff like that to help hold the tube in place so that you can, like me, I'm working alone. I'm not going to have somebody that can just hold the other side. So I'm going to have to figure out ways to use magnets or a third hand clamp or something like that to hold the tubes in place so that I can get them tacked up. Sometimes you're going to need to motivate those tubes to go in place. So a decent dead blow hammer or rubber mallet or something like that can be invaluable. The last section here is pretty short. It's just kind of cleanup and final touches on the cage. So you're going to need some brooms. Like I've got a nice wide shop broom and just kind of a small house broom. I've got this nice big metal dustpan, and you notching, cutting, welding, all that stuff makes a ton of mess. So having like a magnet sweeper is really handy. This big one from Harbor Freight is really good. It picks up a ton of stuff and it makes it so you don't track as much stuff into the house, because it's still going to track some stuff in, but the magnet sweeper helps a lot. So one of the last steps before hitting with a coat of primer or paint is just to hit the whole cage with either like a sander or like a wire wheel on a grinder. Do not grind your welds. Don't grind your welds smooth. Every race sanctioning body rule book that I've ever read, every comment I've ever read says do not grind your welds. So as long as they are intact and they're decent welds, do not grind them, because you will get failed and you will not be able to run at the track. I do want to run this at the track eventually, so that's just one thing I'm reminding myself about, is don't grind your welds, but you can hit them with like a wire wheel to clean them up before paint. And that's the last thing, is paint. So we're just gonna hit this with a coat of gray primer when we're done caging it, because I've got a really cool paint scheme and theme for the car that you're just gonna have to stick around and find out what that is. Hint, I'm in Oklahoma. So yes, I guess. But that does it for my list of everything I'm going to need to turn this crappy Miata into a Miata cart. I'm sure there's some stuff I left off, and there's some general fabrication stuff that's kind of given. Sawzall blades, cut off discs, stuff like that. But let me know what I missed, and let me know oh, here we go. Here's a good question. Let me know which death cart is your favorite, and see if you guys can guess mine. It involves roadkill, so pretty easy giveaway. Thanks, and I'll see you next time on the channel where we are thrashing this Miata. Do what you always do. Take care of one another, and I'll see you. Bye. Oh, go buy a shirt. Go buy a shirt.